we are here with Dr. Stephanie Wilson in our postdoc interviews. Could you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your educational background, how you got to The Ohio State University?
Sure. Well, if you want to start from the beginning,
Yes.
I went to a small liberal arts college in Tennessee called Rhodes College.
Okay.
And I majored in psychology, got my bachelor's in that, and had so much fun in the liberal arts setting that I hadn't fully nailed down what path I was going to take after that. I was just taking classes that intrigued me and working on my honors thesis, and that's how I found out about research. So I spent 4 years in a child narrative lab trying to understand how children use stories to solve conflict.
That's very interesting. Definitely an interesting take on that.
Yeah, and I've come pretty far away from that at this point, but I still there's a lot that I take away from that period, and my mentor at the time really showed me that research could be a potential career path. I didn't have any researchers in my family, so that was it. The idea of getting to ask and answer questions that intrigue you for a living was not something that was news to me.
Yeah.
So I spent some time at a medical center after that, and that's where I really started to get interested in kind of the mind-body connection and how family relationships, how social interactions, how the conversation we're having now can affect our health. So I would spend some time with the psychologist in the interviewing room, listening to parents talk about whether their child was ill, like how the family was dealing with the illness. And then I shadowed the other doctors who were showing the medical scans of the patients and the progression of cancer versus not. And I was so curious to see whether there was any overlap between the two. So I pursued graduate studies in health psychology, lifespan developmental psychology. I went to Penn State and got my PhD in human development and family studies. And I focused there on couples who were chronically ill, facing chronic pain, and we studied how their everyday interactions affected the patient's long-term changes in physical function, so how well they could walk across the room. And there was still a piece from way back that I really wanted to pull in more of a biological perspective, so I've always been interested in immune function. And
it's a fascinating process.
It really is. Yeah. And there was this paper that had stuck in my mind for years when I read it in grad school by Dr. Jan Kiecolt-Glaser. Kiecolt-Glaser et al. 2005.
You do have it memorized, ingrained in your memory.
Yeah, and it was about how marital conflict can instigate inflammatory responses that interrupt wound healing and delay wound healing.
Really?
And
okay.
Yeah, I was like, what? My mind was blown.
You would never think to come to that conclusion just out of the blue.
Right. Yeah, exactly. When you get a wound and you have a fight, you wouldn't think that
exactly that process would kind of affect that.
Exactly. So, and they showed sort of the metrics of like the objective measurement of the wound and how that progressed over time, as well as sort of the cytokines that were at the local site. And it just seemed like a very rigorous and compelling way to go about some of these questions. So when I was searching for postdocs, I thought, you know what, I'm going to cold email her and just see. I did not expect her to respond.
Yeah.
And the next day, like even within 24 hours, she responded.
Oh my gosh, that's phenomenal.
I was pretty sure that a person would need a background in immunology, maybe even have like more biological training, and I guess my background was close enough for her to be interested and to reach out, and so yeah, that was history. So
wow.
This was 2 years ago. I've been here for 2 years, and yeah, it's been really amazing. It's been everything that I could have hoped for and more.
Well, that's amazing that you took that one little jump of why not, and now you're here.
It can sometimes pay off, yeah.
So can you describe a little bit more now that you're here at the Ohio State University?
Mm-hmm.
What does your research entail? What's your biggest focus as of right now?
Right now, I'm really focusing on couples' relationships and immune function.
Yeah.
So we look at how our psychology, our daily stress affects various aspects of immune function, but my particular focus is on relational dynamics. So how the quality of the relationship, how different behavioral patterns when we bring couples into the lab and basically watch them fight, watch them talk to each other about things that were upsetting in their lives while the other person listens, and watch them share joys and positive events and how they support each other in that. So that's an ongoing project right now, and interested in how that relates to various aspects of the immune system, including inflammation. And inflammation is sort of a target for us because chronic elevations in inflammation, as you know, it's sort of like a growing
kind of stress
topic.
levels is definitely something that you probably look a lot at, especially in this environment and today's kind of day and age, right?
Right, when we're all stressed and we don't sleep, and all of these things that predict higher inflammation, and then in turn, inflammation or chronic levels of elevated inflammation are a hallmark of a whole host of age-related diseases, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, just a whole host of the comorbidities that we begin to see as people age. They all have this inflammatory component. So if we can understand how marital dynamics relate to inflammation, then we might be able to leverage that to then help to maybe stave off some of these negative health effects.
Is there a particular group of couples that you look at, like younger, older, kind of in between somewhere?
So that's sort of the piece that I'm bringing from my developmental background. So I studied older, middle-aged and older couples who had already developed chronic pain in grad school, and now we're looking at couples ages 40 and older, so really middle-aged and older. A lot of the samples, if you just try to recruit couples, you'll typically get really happy younger couples. They want to be together and they're proud of their happy relationship, and so we really are seeking people who have who sort of span the marital satisfaction scale. So we work really hard to get people who are unhappy in their relationships as well.
Which must be a challenge in itself, too, to get them to come out and kind of participate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you don't want to spend time with your spouse, if you, then the work day or just the day away from them is sort of time well spent for you, then it might be hard to get both people. And just getting two people at the same time to agree to the same thing. There's usually one person who's more excited about the study than others. So it's definitely what we put a lot of our resources into, just being really careful about the range that we select. And then, so we were working really hard with the Office of Aging here to reach older couples as well. So there are some ideas and some theories in the developmental literature that suggest that as we age, we focus more on maximizing our emotional well-being, and that is in part about sort of valuing our most, our closest relationships, and sort of pruning away the relationships that don't matter as much to us, and really preserving the relationships that we do have. And if that's true, then marital conflict should go down with age. And that's really the primary paradigm that we've used to study how relationships work and how they affect health. So that's part of what my new project is looking at. So do couples of different ages take different approaches to fighting and to telling each other about something that was upsetting to them? And what is the sort of immune consequence of that for people of all ages.
It's very interesting how you have a lot of collaboration that must go into this, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
can you kind of talk about your experience of that? How has it been collaborating with people from different disciplines coming together to do this study? And
Yeah.
how has your experience here been for you, at The Ohio State University in terms of community and collaboration?
Yeah, it's really been one of a kind, and I have to credit my primary mentor, Dr. Kiko Glazer, because she and her longtime collaborator, Dr. Glazer, so
Yeah.
they're a couple, really sort of. He's an immunologist, she's a psychologist, and
So it just kind of
they
fuses,
merged to
yes.
create, this little sort of subfield and subcategory of research that's been really dynamic and exciting. And part of that was creating the Institute for Behavioral Medicine Research. So really what the IBMR building is located down in the medical center.
Oh, okay.
And so we have immunologists, neuroscientists, and psychologists in the same space. We have regular seminars that brings us together and sort of spans the interdisciplinary space of psychology and sort of bodily processes, biology. And that's really many of these collaborations have been stewing for 20 years or more. So I was actually really fortunate to not have to pave my own way like a lot of these, and that's partially what can make for a compelling application when a reviewer has seen that these relationships work, that they've been able to work productively together and been able to train people together, and that's really like where the magic happens, I think. So it's amazing. And a lot of times when you get people together from different disciplines, there's either some awkwardness or it doesn't feel as natural, or maybe there's like some suspicion, like
kind of like a clashing of fields, kind of questioning credibility from different fields, it seems like.
Yeah, but we have this really unique atmosphere, I think, where there's just mutual respect on all sides, and when you start from there really aren't any limits to where you can go.
Can you describe kind of what a day-to-day looks like in the life of a researcher like you?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So there's always a bit of email. So I work in the context of our lab. We're a pretty big lab, and we have several different suites that we're kind of spread across, but all in the same floor of the same building. So there's a lot of sort of like hustle and bustle of people dropping in and asking questions. We have a lab manager, a data manager, we have several project coordinators, and we have also several students who work with us. So there's always data collection going on, so maybe dropping in to the Clinical Research Center over in Dodd Davis, which is just next to us. That's where we collect most of our data. So dropping in there and maybe participating in that for a little bit, brainstorming what to do about so-and-so, whatever issue, or talking about eligibility criteria. So there's a lot of that back and forth. And meetings, talking about research findings, talking about writing progress and ideas.
A lot of communication.
Yes.
Yes, definitely. So what would you say, I know this is still something that you haven't been at for really, really long, it's relatively new, but what has been something that's been your favorite part of doing this research? Maybe one experiment that you stood out to, since you do have a lot of people coming in for the experiments and studies. Can you describe something that kind of made an impact on you?
I think what's been most exciting to me is getting to see and participate and sort of be involved in the couple interaction piece. So a lot of what psychologists do, just because it takes so long to accumulate data over the course of years, is we do a lot of secondary data analysis. So it's looking at numbers. So that's a part of the day that I didn't mention, but it's definitely in there. So getting to sort of see those interactions and some of those dynamics that have been reduced to numbers in the forms of papers. Getting to see those come to life, and helping to sort of broker those has been definitely the most exciting part. It can be pretty intimate, the details that we ask of people. We're asking them to be really honest and open, and really also engage in maybe some really uncomfortable aspects of the relationship, and sort of maybe some things that are easy to pass over in daily life, asking them to take a look at it.
And what have the responses been like? Have the participants been cooperative, or has it been difficult and a challenge going about that?
Yeah. People are surprisingly open. So I think it's partly a selection effect. So if people are willing to be in a study, they're typically, and both partners are willing to show up, then usually it's the case that both people are willing to sort of have that conversation while the cameras are rolling. So yeah, people do things that you wouldn't necessarily expect them to do. Pretty easy to forget that the camera is rolling. So and other research has sort of compared little snapshots of fly on the wall type recordings of couples at home versus the patterns that they show in the lab, and they're pretty consistent, surprisingly consistent with what we see.
So kind of another question I wanted to ask was, you mentioned you started your undergrad in psychology. What was kind of your inspiration to even go in that field? What motivated you to pursue psychology and kind of go on this path? I know you mentioned your mentor. Aside from that, what else?
I was always drawn to psychology, like as early as I can remember. I was interested in people and trying to figure out people. So like even in middle school, I wanted to be like a peer mediator and wanted to volunteer at like the suicide hotline in high school, and took whatever classes that I could possibly take in psychology in high school. And then I thought I wanted to become a clinician. And I guess I just caught, of course people do clinical research. People can become both clinicians and researchers. But I had caught this bug of wanting to ask questions about kind of how people change and how social interactions sort of induce change in us in ways that we don't even realize until it's already happened. That I ended up just sort of following the questions that had come up. Just kept coming up sort of mysteriously in daily life. Things that there were certain topics that I was just drawn to, and it's sometimes hard to explain exactly why. But yeah, I would say that theme was pretty well established pretty early on, and then I guess it manifested in a way that I didn't expect. So, and that's because I hadn't had much exposure to research.
Definitely, yes.
So then when I saw that, it sort of fell into place for me.
And you mentioned in your family, not many people or none at all were researchers. What was their take on that when you kind of told them about your pathway, your decision to become a researcher?
Well, I feel like I even fell into it. So I was never, because I understood like how hard it is to like get a tenure track position, and I never like had the confidence or the audacity, I guess, to assume that I would get there, because it doesn't work out for everybody. So I sort of framed it in a way that I'm following my curiosity, basically.
Yes.
I am interested in human behavior, and I want to learn how to study it, and they're sort of like, okay, we support you, go do that, we have no idea what you do. So yeah, it's sort of been a process, I guess, along the way of talking about maybe in more obscure ways. Hopefully I've gotten better about talking about it over the course of the years. But yeah, of course they've been supportive the whole way. And it wasn't until the recent past that I felt like, okay, yeah, I can say that this is my career path.
Well, you have accomplished a lot. I mean, look at you. You made it from doing just psychology undergraduate to kind of making it here, doing your own research in a lab and following a paper that you read when you were a lot younger. You have definitely have come a long way. I was going to ask just a little bit more about yourself in terms of family and everything. Where are you from? Are you from around the area or somewhere further?
I'm from the South. I'm from Memphis.
So how does that feel, being that far away from home in Columbus, and kind of what do you like about being here in Columbus?
Yeah. I was really struck in the beginning when I first visited here because I had never been to Columbus before. I came from Penn State, so it's I spent several years in state college before, so I had somewhat adapted to the cold, which would have otherwise worried me. I did think that it was going to be warmer than it is compared to state college, but it's pretty similar, so I was adapted. So I was surprised by how passionate people are about Columbus. Like, a lot of people, if they weren't from here, then a lot of the people that I talked to had been here for several years, and they just really love it. Yeah. And I think that it's sort of, I mean, of course I miss home.
Definitely.
And I would like to be close to family. But in choosing just any other place to live, I think Columbus is a great place. I love that you can, it sort of has many of the attractions and amenities of a bigger city. So pretty much anything that you want to do that you can think of, you can find. So that's great. And then it's also not like as difficult to traverse as a big city. So you can, you know, drive anywhere from point A to point B in like 15 or 20 minutes. Here, it's just, I've gotten really spoiled with being able to go anywhere, do anything, and that's what I really like about Columbus.
So kind of following up on that topic, outside of research and outside of lab, what are some things that you enjoy doing just personally? You know, what's something unique or interesting that you like to devote your time to?
Yeah. Well, my next priority from research is my dog.
Your dog?
Yeah.
What kind? Lula.
She's a Boston Terrier pug mix. She loves people. She loves to run. She loves the ball. So she's like my next favorite thing, of course. And then beyond that, I love exploring new coffee shops. There's always like a new bar. Yeah. So I really like being able to sort of take advantage of the cool places.
Columbus has a very artistic scene to it, especially like down on High Street, the Shore North. Do you have any favorite places that you like to go to?
I like Bottle Shop a lot.
I've heard of that.
On King. So it's very, very close to my house. And I like the Angry Baker too. It's right next door. So it's really great to kind of like have the city feel, and also have like just a few doors down something that I can go to and enjoy, like a latte or a cocktail or something.
Definitely.
And then, so I have always wanted to check out like beat poetry, like poetry readings.
Yes. Or slam poetry.
Slam poetry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that one of your interests, kind of poetry or slam or any of that?
I love language. I love anything with a beat, so I really love music and going out to see music. But actually, one thing that I always played instruments growing up.
Really? What kind?
I played violin growing up, and then I picked up clarinet when it was time for like band years.
Yes, the band years.
Yeah. So I live in a house, like a Victorian style house in Victorian Village, and I've been really like not comfortable playing the violin because it carries. Like, I can hear my neighbor's sounds, and I know that they would be able to hear. But I did buy a ukulele and have started to learn it. Yeah, because it's very quiet, and I'm not worried about my neighbors being bothered by it.
Yes.
So, yeah, and there's actually a ukulele group here in town called No Strings Attached, or is it Strings Attached? So you just go, you give like a $5 donation, and you learn like a few songs, and it's people of all ages. Like, there were some little kids and some like retired older folks, and it was just like a really friendly atmosphere, like really low pressure, and yeah, so that's sort of my new thing.
So kind of to finish it off, last question. I like asking this because the answers you receive are always very interesting and diverse. So what would you say motivates you, or kind of to do your research, or what's the passion that drives you?
It's, I don't know if this is too obvious, but
nothing is too obvious.
It's just the innate curiosity. It's the questions. It's the fact that anytime I see like a pattern, I want to pursue it, and I'm curious to know more about it, and I want to see sort of what's underneath it. Yeah, so really what I'm interested in doing is sort of connecting across time scales how things work. So how does this thing in the moment that we're doing like form patterns over longer periods of time and eventually get us to a place where that might be very different from where we would have been otherwise. So yeah, I would say that's it. And that's how I decided my career path, basically, that I was interested in understanding human behavior better and like what makes us tick. And if I had been in any other position, I still would have been asking those questions. I'm sure I could have channeled that passion into some another way. Yeah, but I really enjoy using the tools that we have with the scientific approach to be able to do that. So it kind of, something that probably started very young, that basic curiosity just got channeled into this form, I think.
Into working at a lab at Ohio State University. Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. And that concludes our postdoc spotlight interview with Dr. Stephanie Wilson. We hope you enjoyed listening, and we hope you tune in for the next spotlight interview. See you then.